Hey guys, I'm Charlie Shrem, and you're listening to Untold Stories. Today on the show, I had Jonathan Levin, the Chief Strategy Officer of Chainalysis. It's a very hot topic, very hot industry, because a lot of people even go and call these chain analysis type companies, that work with governments and law enforcement, traitors to our industry. I very much disagree, because these are the companies that are on the front lines of talking to the governments. You want them to be Bitcoin OGs. You want them to love our industry. You don't want these to be negative people. The person I spoke to today, Jonathan, is brilliant and completely understands, got his start in the industry, getting free tickets to conferences for live tweeting them. Now, don't forget, I am personally a victim of one of these companies using data that was incorrect to go to a court and to try to freeze my assets. And they were almost successful, and I didn't have any due process. You would think that makes me jaded and angry, but it doesn't. And it was a wonderful, wonderful episode that you guys are going to love. Well, Jonathan Levin, thanks for coming to Untold Stories today.
Thanks, Charlie. How are you?
Good. It's so funny because every show kind of starts off the same. I'll do a little bit of small talk in the beginning, and then I'll be like, nice to meet you. And then the guest will say, we've met before. And I'll say, tell me when. And then I'll go to my computer and it's 8 years ago or whatever. You're the CEO of Chainalysis and you were the CEO of Coinmetrics. You've been in the space a long time. But you said you were a broke student back then in 2013 when you were at this conference that I spoke at in London.
Yeah. So I'm one of the co-founders of Chainalysis. I'm the chief strategy officer. And my journey into crypto started when I was in college in Oxford in the UK. And I was studying economics, and I was really sort of interested in being one of the first economists to take a serious look at cryptocurrencies. In 2012, 2013, there really wasn't a lot of interest in it. And so, I was trying to, from an academic standpoint, learn about the industry and try and get into these conferences. And in order to get into sort of my first conference, I wrote to Pamir Gilenby, who was organizing one of the first Bitcoin conferences in London in 2013. And it was really sort of at this moment where there was a 2012 conference in London, but this was trying to get the banks and the financial institutions interested. So he put it in Canary Wharf and put it in level 39, and it was amazing production. But I couldn't afford a ticket. So I said to Pamir that I would live tweet the event and build up his social media profile and build his brand. And so
I love the hustle.
Did that successfully. And then he was like, well, now we're doing Coin Summit in San Francisco. And by that point, I had co-founded Coinometrics, which was really about sort of understanding the health of the Bitcoin ecosystem at the time, and what metrics you need to measure to understand how prevalent cryptocurrencies are. And then from there, sort of after Coinometrics, realized that the first problem that really needed to be solved about understanding how and why people use cryptocurrencies was really the compliance and investigations use case, which sort of led to us founding Chainalysis and taking us to where we are today.
I'm actually moderating a panel tomorrow on data and analytics in crypto with CoinMarketCap. So hopefully some of the takeaways that you give me I could use in my moderation. It's very interesting because Chainalysis as an industry, it gets a bad rap from the crypto industry, but it's one of those things that and I want to say I want to take a step back. I was really looking forward to this episode, but I struggled with this episode a little bit, and I have to tell you why. I am a victim, unfortunately, of where the chain analysis industry can go wrong. And while I understand this is a very important industry, and I completely agree with it, and you need it, you have one of your quotes in your press release from yesterday, you said, Chainalysis is doubling down on government business to propel and flywheel of growth of this industry. When law enforcement and regulators become comfortable with cryptocurrency, exchanges are able to grow, and financial institutions can enter the ecosystem safely and responsibly. I completely agree with that. It is so important. And you're almost a gatekeeper, and I'm happy that you're someone who really has been around the space and loves the industry. But also, I was saying back, I grappled with it because I'm a victim of someone, not your company, of course. There's another company. I was party to a lawsuit, and there was another company in your industry, in your same space, that essentially was paid by the person who was suing me to create like a chain analysis to validate what they had already believed. So it was not a independent thing. It was a validation of what they had already believed. And the problem was the validation was wrong. So all of a sudden, this document was used to freeze all of my assets immediately without any due process, because they told the judge, Charlie's going to run away with our money that this company said Charlie has right now. So all of a sudden I wake up and my bank account, nothing works. Now, again, it was false. Not only was it false, but the person who actually owned the address was so afraid that this lawsuit was going to take his money because they had nothing to do with me. He actually went to the judge privately, like had his lawyer say, no, this company was wrong. This is my money, not Charlie's. And that was like what really changed the case. No one really talks about how that actually went down. But I went through very traumatic issues from that. Imagine waking up and like, you can't do anything. You can't even defend yourself. I couldn't even pay my lawyers. So, and wait, I just want to finish it off. You guys are doing such a great job. And I'm happy this happened to me because what you're doing is so important. And I wanted to tell you this when we first started the show, like, just because I felt like I didn't want to, something that has been bothering me for many years. And if there's any company or any person that could make that better, it's you. So how can we do that?
So I think, like, to your point, it's really important that it is due process, and it is something that is well understood and comprehended, and it's not just a claim that anyone can make against someone else that results in sort of adverse consequences or anything like that. Like, what we have found and sort of the origin of the business, if you think about sort of the early days when we were first getting started in 2014, no one thought it was even possible to trace Bitcoin.
Yeah, no one did.
People thought it was completely anonymous. And so when that claim comes through, or when someone says that they can do something, it's something that is irrefutable and there's no real like credible evidence there. And so what Michael and I focused on originally is really being there, explaining, how does the blockchain work? What is the limits to traceability? What can you be sure of? And what can really stand up to scrutiny? And we thought about this from a view of saying, well, evidence in court is our bar of like, what should we be able to claim and show? It should be able to be something that can stand up in a court of law. And when we started to do that, we started to say, we can build this data set that can give people insight about how and why people are using cryptocurrencies, but in a way that is something that could be a claim that you could actually put into a court of law and refute it or show exactly how it works. And the thing that was the biggest time that we spent was actually sort of educating people on what is the art of the possible. And to a large extent, it's taken us 5 years or 6 years to build up like a whole training program, a certification program, something that like other people now can have that knowledge and refute some of the claims that maybe you had back in the day.
You should have like a training program for lawyers so they can learn.
We do.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So what type of tell me about that.
Yeah. So they could come and do our, we have a basic certification, like a cryptocurrency fundamentals course. You can come and do that. You can sign up online.
I require all my lawyers to take that course right now.
Yeah, send them. So we have that, and then we have a cryptocurrency investigator certification as well, where it takes 2 days, and you can go through that, and you essentially get to understand, the methods and how you can actually build these investigations in cryptocurrencies.
Do you find it sometimes difficult dealing with like various like bureaucratic bodies, because just the way these institutions are built is they're not really flexible and organic. Like even thing like, how do you invoice a government agency? Do you ever have an issue with like a local county not paying you or something like that, or a police department? Like, do you sue them? What do you do?
So we work in, I would say that it's funny, you're sort of referring to the US, but like we also work
you do
completely
international.
globally. So like,
well, what if you have a country that doesn't pay you or something, you know?
Well, yeah. I mean, during COVID, we've definitely had some interesting paperwork challenges where something needs to be physically signed and delivered in person. And we're like, we're not coming to your country, even if it's in Europe and stuff like that. So we've definitely learned that, and our finance team has got creative with how they deal with government procurement processes. But actually, I would say that the procurement side aside, the government agencies now have a cadre of people that really do get the industry, and there really is sort of been this evolution of people making their careers out of solving these big crypto cases, understanding how to build smart regulation around cryptocurrencies, and the people that have really latched on to this industry and understood it are people that are doing really well in their careers and are being rewarded for it. So 5 years down the line, I've seen the agents and analysts that we originally worked with, now really having much bigger responsibilities in those agencies, and
it's true.
Being looked at. Yeah,
it's true. It's crypto became like the thing. If you get a good crypto case, I think the prosecuting attorney on my case actually puts after I went to jail, he moved to the other side, to the defense attorney side, from working for the government on my case. Like, it was a springboard. How do I know this? It's in his bio at his defense, whatever law firm he works for now. It says the successful takedown of Charlie Shrem. I'm like, what takedown? It's in my parents' basement.
But I think that, to your point, is
but it's funny. I have if I saw my judge in the street today, I would hug him. I want to take him for coffee. I have nothing but respect for the powers that be and the people. You have to follow the laws at the end of the day. If we want to operate in this country, we have to do it. And so it's cool to meet some of these people later on sometimes, and hear that they're smiling and everything. I think I had met the arresting agent. The guy actually arrested me. I met him 2 years later, and we were totally cool. And it was because he had given me a Pepsi when I was in jail that first night.
I think that the
I didn't mean to go into stories.
The thing for the whole prosecution and litigation side of this is that you need to have prosecutors who understand the industry, who understand what is possible. The agents who are building the agents who are building these cases, they've also had to go up a real steep learning curve and set some good precedents and understand what's possible. So I think that we've come a really long way, and a lot of those personalities are they're fantastic people, and they're really they're doing great work.
So let's dive into some data and analytics. What type of cool data did you see? Oh, I wanted to tell you something interesting. You were talking about that the conference earlier in London. I want the listeners to kind of get understanding. Here you are, you're live tweeting, and I'm speaking, and you have who's who is at this event, and it was in London in Canary Wharf, and it was beautiful. And the Bitcoin went into a bear market for another 2.5 years after that. I'm not laughing because I was sitting in jail for 2 years, so it doesn't matter to me. But what was that like going through that bear market? Because there was so much excitement, and then all of a sudden 2 years go by, and it's just kind of price flat, but everyone's building. Are there any data or metrics that we can look from those years and kind of look at now and see where we are now in the cycles of the bull and bear markets?
Yeah, sure. So we actually are. We just released a site on our website that allows you to actually come in and take a look at some of the core metrics.
Let's do it right now.
well, you can't do it right now because you just it's not released yet. It will be released by the time the podcast comes out.
Okay, cool.
So we'll show you that. And really the point behind this is that the biggest frustration that I had at that conference, and I'm going to put you in this bucket as well,
That's
is
fine.
you stood on the front of the stage and you were like, Bitcoin's going to change the world. It's like the most amazing technology. Like you can't even imagine the implications of it. But you had no data, not a single slide in that conference put up the data on like how Bitcoin was being used in 2013.
I know.
What metrics people should be looking at to understand, is
right.
this an investable asset? There was nothing. And so like I was sitting in the audience and that really gave me the impetus to start Chronometrics, is that I said, if this industry is going to be anything more than like these conferences, there needs to be some metrics about, how and why people are using crypto. And that's why we started Coinometrics. And then that's why, 5 years later at Chainalysis, we're launching this site that allows you to actually come in and look at what are the core metrics driving some of these cryptocurrencies. And the core metrics for us are looking at, what is the liquidity behind Bitcoin? How much Bitcoin is moving? What are the types of wallets that have, received Bitcoin but not sent any Bitcoin? And we call that sort of something that's more illiquid. And we're looking at like on what exchanges, what is the sort of trade intensity? How much Bitcoin do they have versus how much is being traded on their platforms? And so we're looking at some of those core metrics and flows so that people can understand, how does this market actually function?
But how do you differentiate data? So like, can we go into a little bit of like we'll go into the rabbit hole a little bit and we'll talk about like what a Bitcoin transaction is. And I really want to know, like, how do you explain this sometimes to regulators? Because like, there's no such thing as an actual Bitcoin. And let's just, for the sake of like the conversation, let's just call all crypto Bitcoin for now. Like, cause let's just assume they all operate the same. So, cause if someone comes to you with like an Ethereum transaction or whatever, actually it's a little bit different because Bitcoin, there's just, unspent inputs, and then unspent outputs. And so you have all a Bitcoin is essentially all these unspent outputs that amass to a certain amount that you can then spend. So there's no such thing as a Bitcoin. There's just millions of these unspent outputs essentially. And then they kind of all go together. So there's no, you can't taint a Bitcoin. You can't really taint an unspent output. So how do you explain that? Like, how do you explain to someone what a Bitcoin is in that sense of it?
So the way that we think about this is really, we abstract even further than that. It's like, where are Bitcoin being held? Because you can hold an unspent output, right? Charlie controls unspent outputs, which means you control some Bitcoin. And so what we look at is, particularly in our metrics, is either how many Bitcoin are currently held by exchanges. That's an interesting metric when you think about like the economy. You're thinking about how much of this economy is people holding Bitcoin at trading venues versus how many Bitcoin are in transit between places. And so you could have a Bitcoin that you take off an exchange and you're going to move it onto another exchange, and we would call that something that's in transit.
Okay,
and so we think about this as sort of the flow of funds between entities that people can understand. So we like to sort of say most Bitcoin are being used in some sort of service. People are using apps to do things with crypto. They're trading it. They're sending it to friends. They're sending it to a gambling site, or there's cyber criminals who are using it for services or ransomware. And so we say, what Chainalysis does is it maps, cryptocurrency transactions into those real world entities and shows how do these different entities use Bitcoin. And some of them are holding Bitcoin and some of them are really sending it around really quickly. So we don't need to get so deep into the weeds of like, unspent outputs or like exactly like how a Bitcoin transaction works. The time that we get into that is to show you how we come to our conclusions about what does it mean to identify like an exchange's wallet. Like what does that mean? But most people don't really need to get into all of the detail of how that works.
Okay, come on. This is so cool. This is the new Bitpay card that I have in my hand, and I'm so excited to be finally having the new one that just came out. Now, guys, I've been using the Bitpay card since 2016. Yeah, you heard that right. Way before I started Untold Stories, way before Bitpay became a sponsor of mine, I've been using this card, and it literally became a way for me to have a bank account for many, many years, as a lot of people in crypto need better banking. The Bitpay card is chock full of the coolest features. It's got contactless pay, better rates and limits, no fees to convert from Bitcoin right onto the card, added in chip security. I mean, it's sexy, it looks good, unlike other cards. It's so easy to get. Just download the Bitpay app on your phone, click the card icon, and you can do it right there. If you use the promo code CharlieJune20, your card is free. Remember, CharlieJune20. It's in the show notes. You can get a free card. So literally, just from listening to my show today, and make sure you actually listen, you could get a free card just by entering that code. So download the Bitpay app, get the coolest card on the market, the best card on the market. I've been using it for over 4 years now. I know there are so many cards out there, but the Bitpay brand is the oldest and longest running Bitcoin company in the world. I mean, that's who issues this card. This is the card you want to have. Remember, CharlieJune20. Download the Bitpay app on iOS or Android to sign up for the new card. You're going to freaking love it. It's so interesting how I feel like a lot of times your role is, like education, right? At the same time, like teaching and explaining.
Yeah.
As the chief strategy officer, that's what CSO stands for, right? Chief strategy officer. It does, right?
Luckily not the chief security officer.
No, that's not a fun job. And congratulations, you guys just launched. You guys just announced your Series B. You added $13 million to it. Congratulations. I'm in a chat room, and it's funny because someone just posted the link, and then I'm in a chat room with Michael. I didn't even know, and someone said, "Congrats, Michael," and then I just responded and I said, "Hey, I'm actually recording with Jonathan right now." That's pretty funny. So, is there a common denominator in terms of like, let's talk about like, let's break it down. So you have like different types of clients. You can have private clients like me, that maybe like lost money or a party to a lawsuit or whatever. Then you have like the government bucket. The government bucket, does it, what they're looking for, is there like a common denominator? The types of investigations, are they like, I guess you can't give specifics obviously, but do you notice like common themes? Like, are they looking for like, drugs a lot, like child pornography? Are they focusing on like important things like that?
Yeah, sure. So I think that what you're seeing in the government space is probably like a few different trends. I would say government agencies around the world are trying to tackle cybercrime writ large. Like, think about like people getting scammed out of money, people getting extorted, people getting vulnerable people in society getting scammed by cyber criminals. Like, think back to like the original sort of phishing emails that you receive and all stuff like that. Like all that stuff.
Did you know?
Really, like, yeah.
No, you finish. I'm going to write down what I'm going to say because I don't want to lose your train of thought.
Yeah, so I think that cybercrime as a theme is sort of one of the biggest priorities when it comes to national government priorities, and they really sort of cracking down on financially motivated cybercrime, but then also sort of cybercrime's gone into like a national security domain, and so a lot of the agencies who are looking at like cybersecurity, election security, like those types of issues are really focused on how does cryptocurrency fit into that, and cryptocurrency really fits into that because it's a real-time global payment system that is linked with it's one of the only places where they can really understand the financial flows without any barriers, which provides them like a major advantage in understanding it. And then it's also being used to pay for infrastructure and things that leverage these attacks on vulnerable people and issues of national security.
What do they
so
think about
they're definitely
stablecoins?
focused on those big issues.
What do they think about stablecoins?
So stablecoins are definitely more of a regulatory issue at this point. So, they haven't taken off to the same extent as something like Bitcoin that's used in crimes that we're sort of talking about, drugs, child pornography, and stuff like that.
A lot of MLM schemes too, stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot
like
of that
10% of it. I heard like 10% of Ethereum transactions are MLM. I mean, there's a lot of this data out there that a lot of the Ethereum transactions and Bitcoin even so are still dealing with a lot of this, underground negative stuff. Yeah.
So I would say that in Bitcoin, we have a stat that is going to be live on the website. You can have a look at it, where you can actually go and see sort of the Bitcoin transactions on a weekly basis. How much of that is linked to known illicit activity? Illicit activity that we are actually proactively looking at. And
like plus token.
If you think
if it's linked to like a plus token type thing. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So for us,
that's so cool.
Roughly 2 million Bitcoin are moving on a weekly basis, right? Between exchanges, largely between exchanges or for, good activity. Roughly at the moment, like 0.3, 0.4% of that weekly flow is actually, linked with known illicit activity, and you can go check that number on our website.
Wow, that's so cool. Like cool that you can get the data, not cool that that's happening. I should rephrase that. But that's important data like that actually has to come out. What I was excited to tell you before, I have a story for you. So I'm going to tell you an untold story, and then you're going to tell me one. But
okay.
So the first ever realization that I was being used as part of like a scam was back at the BitInstant days. I was dealing with like customer service a lot, which actually ended up being my downfall. But we're getting emails from people like, "Hey, I used your service, and I never got my reptile." I'm like, "What?" Then you get another email like a week later. "Hey, I used your service and I never got my parrot." What? A week later. "Hey, I used your service. Where's my very rare breed, like German Shepherd dog delivered to Canada or whatever?" And then, "Where's my very expensive alligator that I'm supposed to..." And I'm like, what are these emails we're getting? So we did some investigation, and someone was using Bitcoin to set up a fake, we called it the pet scam. And he set up like a fake website, or she, and was selling like exotic pets, and then was telling people to buy Bitcoin, and then was like recommending BitInstant as the place to buy Bitcoin for the scam, for the pet scam. And then people were coming to us because at the end of the day, they gave us their money, and we were just a processor. We were just a payment processor. So it was kind of funny how that all went down. That's my story, the pet scam.
I think that it's funny how like you need those little breadcrumbs, the breadcrumbs to figure out like what was happening. And I guess had you seen the Tiger King documentary?
Yeah, I mean, this was like 10 years ago.
You may have figured it out faster.
Can I ask you an honest question? Are we right? I mean, the metrics that you're looking at, are we in that 2014 like just permabull, but without any stats behind it, and we're just gonna have like 2 more years of blah? Or is it different this time? Or on-chain volume, and are the metrics better? Like if you look at then versus now, are people actually using cryptocurrency?
Yeah, I think we're seeing, it's not like hockey, like we're not in the hockey stick market.
And I'm never asking you to predict anything, of course. I just more like then versus now,
No, but I think that, we're in a state today where there are like much more established marketplaces. You've got stable relationships between different entities. You've got to go back to 2014 where the venues and the flows that were, making sense at that point, there were less venues and they had stranger relationships than what we have today. And what we're seeing is sort of, we can notice when sort of the North American market becomes disconnected from the Southeast Asian market, and we can see sort of when sort of those volumes are changing and how how interconnected the markets are. And so, I think that that's changed dramatically since 2014, where really the flows that you were looking at were like Kraken, Bitfinex, Bitstamp, and Coinbase. So like those days are over, and the days where there's real trading venues, there's actual market makers that you can see moving money between different places, getting rid of price disparity, making price discovery better on Bitcoin. That is something that you can notice on chain, and we're seeing that market really mature at a rapid rate, and I think that that shows sort of the stability of the market. Now, I think your bigger question is, how much do we grow from here? And that's sort of a function of how quickly some of the fintechs and other companies enter. But like the thing that I think about today is, there's sort of like two types of crypto business, right? There's like a crypto business that sees themselves as something that is hardcore crypto, that believes in that and goes after like all the latest protocol changes and all the latest developments and experiments that are happening in crypto, which is super exciting. Then you've got like the other side of the market, which is, this is our wedge to capture the millennial wallet share and be like a leading fintech company in the world and a new brand that could be trusted by a new generation of consumer. And I think that what's interesting about that movement is that it's actually kind of creating this competitive pressure in the fintech market, where unless you might be like a stock trading platform, you might be like someone who provides like a savings account or loans or whatever, like, but unless you're actually also providing some ability to get exposure to crypto, you're opening up for like some competitive edge that a competitor can take against you. And so what we're seeing like is a lot of these consumer fintech brands that are building like wallet share are seeing maybe one of their closest competitors offer crypto, and now like they have to also offer crypto.
So it's like a domino effect.
The market. It's like a domino effect, and like at the end of the day, we're now in an age where like the consumer wants choice, and the consumer wants to be able to take advantage of those things.
I mean, you'll see like the PayPal Venmo type situation. If that follows through, it's probably because of, like you said, just like pressure. Cash App and all their competitors are doing crypto. People want crypto. And now, Venmo, PayPal has to, the ability to let people buy, sell, and store crypto, if that's how it's going to go down. But your clients are not just government agencies and like, things like lawsuits or whatever. You get a lot of I'm assuming like corporate clients and just individual people like me. What's like some like quirky or like interesting jobs that you've had to like do for people or for companies? Like, not your typical what you would think, like find this transaction or whatever.
Yeah. So, I mean, the funny thing is that, we're really a product company. So a lot of the work that our corporate and our government customers do, we're actually not exposed to them in terms of,
interesting.
They use our software. They don't use us as a service. So, I would have a million more stories for you if we were a services company. But I still, we still get some interesting stuff, and I don't work the support desk anymore. But we definitely get a lot of questions over the years. I mean, some of the crazy stories that we've had is, when clients first come to us, so an exchange client, someone who's transacting crypto.
Okay.
When they've never looked at what their customers do with their cryptocurrency, the first demo that our team does for that client is just absolutely mind-blowing, where they say like, this is someone who's been operating a business, maybe has like, a few thousand clients, and they have no idea why their customers are buying and selling crypto on their platform. We had this exchange in India where the largest customer on the platform that was responsible for close to 50% of the volume was a darknet market vendor.
Oh,
And
no.
you can imagine that like the person then says like, well, I thought I was in this business of like providing this awesome service to the Indian economy. And now like you're telling
Oh,
me that like
no.
half my business. And the cool thing
Okay,
about
so
that story is,
yeah.
they cleaned it up. They said like, okay, we're going to implement this solution to be able to detect this. And then we're going to be able to like build a much better business on the back of it.
What if they decide to ignore it? What if you find out something and they decide to ignore it? Do you have to report it now to the authorities?
That's a great question.
That
I
sounds
mean,
complicated.
I think that, that is a little bit complicated. We don't typically do that. I mean, I will say that, there are instances where our clients tell us things about, particular criminal cases or like risky activity that we do pass on to law enforcement. So
you probably have so many NDAs and things that you have to sign and just constantly
it's true. Like you need to manage all of that. But like the really cool thing about crypto as an industry is that actually there's a lot of information sharing that does take place, that people are in this, particularly our customers are in this to get rid of that bad activity and to find ways to share information that could lead to, us getting rid of it. Like all the scams that you're talking about, like Plus Token and those types of things.
That's
or
why I
stolen
wanted to talk
Bitcoin.
to you today about this, because that's what people need to realize. Like you're fighting for the community.
Yeah. And the community looks to us as like that central point where, if you report something to Chainalysis and say like, we've noticed on our platform that there's this pet scam and here's the address for the pet scam, suddenly now like all of our client base can now benefit from that. So all of the exchanges that are also being like their users are being subject to the pet scam and the law enforcement agencies that are responsible for investigating pet scams. I'm not actually sure which agency in the US would be responsible for that, but that everyone can benefit by Chainalysis having that information, and so people are willing to share that with us.
You have two products: Chainalysis KYT and Chainalysis Cryptos. Are there any other ones, or it's those two?
Yeah, we have Chainalysis Reactor as well. So Reactor is our investigation product that people do these link charts about how to follow the money in cryptocurrencies.
How do you know when you're trying to follow funds that move through like a blockchain or whatever, that they jump from other blockchains and then back and forth? Do you ever feel like let's just say 100% that I have these funds and it's my address, and then 100% that I now send these funds to this address. As movements happen, can you say with 100% certainty that you kind of know what's going on, or like as it moves or hops from different chains and then back and forth, you kind of lose that certainty whether or not, or like people can? I guess what I'm trying to say is it as easy as people think it is to do anonymous and negative things on like a Bitcoin blockchain or another blockchain?
It's a really tough thing to sort of make a general statement on it. I think there's like some people who think that like there's like two views which are not correct. One is
not correct.
There's like one is like Bitcoin's anonymous, or like Bitcoin's easily anonymous, or like that camp where it's very easy to stay anonymous. Like that view is not correct.
Yeah.
The other view is that like there's no financial privacy in Bitcoin. Like that's also not correct. Is that like actually, to your question, like in order for an investigation to be done where, we can say for certainty that, we started at this point where, Charlie owned this address and owns this Bitcoin, and trace it somewhere else and know for sure that Charlie, still controls the Bitcoin, there's a need to know, what services were involved, and they need to provide some information about, what is happening in those transactions. And that's where you can really tie together, how people are using cryptocurrencies. And so I think that, there is this sort of middle ground where, yes, in a lot of cases, like you withdraw Bitcoin off an exchange, you keep it on your own wallet, you keep it to yourself. Like, you have financial privacy.
I always say it's private. It's just not anonymous.
It's just not. Yeah, it's not anonymous.
I call it the honeypot because criminals think it's anonymous, so they go from whatever they were using, which had more anonymity, to crypto, which has less, and then they get caught. It's like the honey trap. I don't know if you could say honey trap anymore. Is that politically correct? I think you can.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I don't want to say anything. Well, my editors are going to cut it out.
You might insult the bees. No, the idea
I'm so worried nowadays with what I say.
But I think that the way to think about it is, cryptocurrencies provide unique opportunities for law enforcement to build, better investigations in cases that can be brought against those scammers and child abuse material distributors and those types of things that we've been a part of. But also, like, cryptocurrency still provides great financial privacy for people and provides a way for people to transact anywhere in the world, and it's an amazing technology for that at the same time.
It's like it is the most amazing technology, and I think like I'm going to get on stage and not give you any metrics, and this is the most amazing technology in the world.
That reminds me of 7 years ago.
It's.
But the message still needs to be said, so you can say that.
The message needs to be said, but we're in a different world now. I think crypto's in a different world than it was 7 years ago, and it's it's a stupid question to say, like, where do you think we'll be in the next 7 years? But I guess like, how do you see your company and what your products and services evolving in like 3 years from now? What types of clients and what type of services will you need to, or products, offer in like a crypto world where you have multi-layered, maybe instead of one chain, you have multi-layers, like what happens if someone does Lightning, Bitcoin, sidechain, like, there's all these things that can happen. It's crazy.
Yeah. So we obviously track a lot of that stuff.
You have to be on top of like this. You have like almost like have core developers working for you just to stay on top of the code base. Sorry to interrupt you.
No. I mean, you're exactly right. Like we have a really, big research and engineering team that really has a fun job of like keeping up with all the latest protocol developments, whether those are sort of Bitcoin developments or Ethereum or Libra or whatever. Like, we've got to be really deep on the tech, which is actually also sort of different from a lot of crypto companies out there. Like a lot of crypto companies are building sort of consumer applications or institutional applications, right? Like that don't actually touch sort of like the hardcore, like interesting technology that engineers want to work on. So, we've also got some open recs if people are listening to this and want to work on some of the hard and interesting tech problems that we are hiring today.
I'm telling you, our industry has so many job opportunities. It's insane. Like our unemployment rate is probably at 0. If you want to work in crypto, you can work in crypto.
Yeah, you got. Yeah. So we, but where we see things going, like for me, is more on the markets, and I think about this on sort of where our business needs to be from a, who are the clients that we're selling to in 3 years from now. We're really focused on making sure that regulators, law enforcement around the world have the tools at their disposal to create the environment where there can be a fair and open marketplace for crypto. That requires us scaling globally. We're in 20 odd countries today with those law enforcement agencies and regulators. We need to be in more of them to ensure that they can create rules that allow us to really grow as an industry. But at the end of the day, those governments really put the burden on the private sector to make sure that the system is not being abused.
Yeah.
And so, where I see this happening is, financial service companies, cryptocurrency businesses are sort of the main customers for Chainalysis at some point where, the government is really, making sure that the private sector is doing their job in monitoring this industry and taking care of that. And so, eventually sort of big financial service companies need to be in this market, like we spoke about from a defensibility standpoint. And they they eventually are sort of the bigger customers for risk and compliance solutions for Chainalysis. I think that happens over the next kind of 3, maybe a little
3 to
bit
5
longer.
years or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, as they say, from your mouth to God's ears or the ears of the sky people, whatever you believe. Jonathan Levin, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Charlie.